experiences that I was like, that was weird. Or it was things that was like young enough to still be open to possibilities, like, and old enough to know what was happening. There's been times where I've like had weird things happen, or my great grandpa, who I never met, would like, I would like feel him or like smell cologne that I was like, oh, that's him, or something that I was like, felt like presences, places, and I was always really drawn to like old buildings and like the ideas of who was there. And so it's always complicated too to know like how much of it are you making up, how much of it you're like actually sensing something. But I didn't know that it was a thing. There was no internet. I couldn't like find other people that were interested in spirits. And so once I went to this spiritualist church, I was like, okay, this is a whole thing that's been around for at least 100 years, and there's like some structure to it.
My spirituality started off as more of like an earth-based practices. I was trained in Reiki. My spirituality has really evolved from not being really spiritually aware at all. I knew that I had like some sort of intuition, you know, as like a young adult, teenager, and then I got attuned to Reiki, and then things kind of shifted. I met this woman who showed me and explained to me the consciousness of water, and I started, you know, talking and praying and communing with water, sending Reiki to water. Because I see water as, I have grown to really see water as a divine feminine that receives our prayers. I'm really grateful that my spirituality is a lot broader and on my terms, like really on my terms. All in Christ though, which which is like so very out of left field.
My name is Poe, and I'm a practicing herbalist and handcrafter. There was this type of holistic wellness industry, spirituality, that I just don't fuck with. Like, that type of spirituality is just the pharmaceutical industry with like rose quartz, like bow, based off of like capitalism, consumers, customers, and kind of just like making people feel bad for like not drinking. For drinking tap water, not having access to this, that, and the other, and I just, A, couldn't afford that, and B, like, it didn't make sense. But, like, abandoning that take on holistic health and herbalism, I was able to connect with plants, which I feel like is its own spirituality, because every living being on this planet has its own spirit, and everybody's body knows how to communicate to these spirits through blood, breath, and movement, but I feel like we're losing that language, if that makes any sense. Sounds like I'm starting a cult, but like, I think like, I don't know, I feel like my spirituality is just like connecting to land and trying to like show folks that's like not as difficult as it's made to be. You don't need to buy anything for it, you just need to go outside, and feeling like I have friends when I leave the house and like walk down the street and like see plants that I know.
I was living in Boston, and I started going to a spiritualist church in 2000. I had a roommate who was dating this guy whose dad was the pastor at the spiritualist church in Salem, Mass. And he was like, oh, you guys are into ghosts, like you would be into this church. And then we went once, my friend Jackie and I, and we're like, oh, like I thought I made up the idea, not that like I made up the idea that you could talk to spirits, but I didn't know it was like a whole organized religion. I just thought it was something that like I was interested in doing on my own. And then we started going every week, and we would take the train up to Salem, and her boyfriend's parents would come and pick us up and like tell us stories about their private seances that they had. And we would go to church, which was super fun because they had snacks and we sang songs and they gave messages from spirit. It felt totally normal that people were talking to spirits.
There is a spiritual community here in Minneapolis, which is so funny because a lot of us, we felt that there was no community. And this was like before COVID. We were like, yeah, there was like, we were always going, all of us had said this, like we were always going out to travel and find our people. It's so crazy how all of this stuff works. I met this guy out in Sedona when I was on my travels, and he was also from Minneapolis, and we started talking because I was like, oh, he saw me doing Reiki at an ecstatic dance on somebody. He's like, oh, I'm a Reiki practitioner too. And we got to talking, I'm a massage therapist. Oh, me too, no way, where are you from? Minneapolis. No way, me too. Fast forward to 2 years, we run into each other at Powderhorn Park, and he invites me to, it was called at the Magic House down in Hudson. At this point, I'm kind of like, okay, God, like, I need my people. Like, it's midsummer in Minneapolis, and I feel like I'm still kind of not really tapped into community here. I'm feeling really like, oh my gosh. But then I re-meet that guy from 2 years ago. We go to this event, and then all of a sudden, after about 2 years, a year and a half, we're here, and we're finding each other, and we're collecting, like, we're building a network here, and found my soul fam here, and we're finding each other, and it feels like, oh my gosh, thank God. Where have we all been? But we weren't ready for each other, it feels like.
As a practicing spiritualist, there's not like a community here in Minneapolis.
No, when I first moved back here, I did go to a spiritualist church, but it was in like a basement of this really depressing office building in St. Paul, and they just weren't my people. So I only went there once, and then I think they closed. And there's nothing else here. I've heard there was something in Rochester, Minnesota, but I haven't been to it. And there's like a spiritualist camp in Wanawak, Wisconsin that I've been to.
I think there's a perception that the spiritualism is a thing that happened, and it's not a thing that's happening. But I still think that spiritualism is an underknown religion and is not really considered a religion by people that aren't really totally aware of it. And I think it's because of all of those, the stigmas that are attached to what they see in popular culture about what a medium is. It's as much a social justice and reform movement as it is a religion. And in some ways, you hope of religion that religions are social justice movements because of the messages.
The religion of spiritualism is like a lot of older people, and now it's almost like they're conservative. Like they don't talk about anything that's going on in 2022. If the idea is that we're still just spirits in a body, then we should all be fighting for everyone, because like if you're born into this body this time, who's to say you won't be born into a different body the next time that is a body of a person that's like being oppressed? I think part of it is like that's part of their spark that drew a lot of people and then made it feel like, oh, we're doing something for the world. And now it's just sort of an interesting thing that you can talk to spirits and like more personally moving, I guess. But I think that's part of the reason why like younger people aren't as attracted to the religion.
I got into herbalism when I was like really realizing how difficult it was for me to like manage my pain with endometriosis and fibroids and all that stuff. I was seeing doctors and they just continually told me to take birth control. I was like not needing birth control for any type of like contraception at the time, and to this day like I don't really want to have that in my body just to not throw up once a month. Or people would say like it'll be better after you have a kid. Every time I talked to my doctor, they wanted me to like get a handle and talk to a gynecologist so that I could have children, not so I could like have a better quality of life, which also like infuriated me. And I'm just like, who knows if I even want to have kids? I'm just trying to like have an easy month. But those are all the solutions. Have a kid, figure out if you can have a kid, because that's the most important thing. Upon research and trying to find holistic practices, I fell in love with my first plant, which was raspberry leaf. From raspberry leaf and like learning more about menstrual cycles, the womb, I discovered this like part of my lineage that I didn't know about, which was like how modern gynecology is founded on the torture of enslaved black women's wombs. Realizing that there's a lot of ancestral trauma in my body, it just like seemed really fitting for me to try to like break this ancestral curse and like try to understand what's going on in my body and heal that part of my body.
These spiritualists were speaking out for a lot of things, and mediums were going into trances on the speaking circuit in auditoriums, female mediums in the 19th century, speaking about the kinds of political issues that maybe they didn't have agency in the structured society to say, but under the rubric of using your body as a vessel for spirits to give messages, and that being sacred and also direct, it became possible. And so I think now, we still need that. I mean, I started working on the show in 2016. And, in November of 2016, all hell broke loose because Trump became president.
I opened in the space next door, and it was like right after the election, and I wanted there to still be a place for weirdos and like artists that are working with magic, and like a space to have workshops and events. We had an artist residency, and then I was like, oh, and we'll add a little store to like pay for it. This would be the time, because I feel like people are like looking for something, and people are like open to working with magic or like broader spirituality. People just like started coming out of the woodwork, and I met a couple of people that were like spiritualists, but it's mainly been people who are just like open to, I don't think they even have a word for it. Magic is maybe the blanket term for it.
I don't know how many people identify as spiritualists in the country right now. It's not the same kind of numbers as it was at its heyday in like the 1870s or 80s, but I'm, convinced because of all of the stuff that I've seen published in like the New Yorker and the New York Times and stuff like that during the process of working on the show, that it is more popular than it's been probably in a long time, probably in a couple generations. There are enough people who are turning to it that it's fulfilling some kind of need in our culture. Part of it is, I think, pretty straightforward, which is that there's been a huge loss of life in the last 2 years because of COVID. And historically, those are the moments when people have turned to things like that for comfort and for reassurance that their loved ones, they're in a safe place.
I just realized so many people would ask me questions or like kind of be interested in the woo-woo that I was constantly talking about. And with the pandemic, there was a lot of fear. So being able to share with folks, like, this is not a cure for anything that's going on, but like you can learn what's going on in your body at the very least when it feels like nothing's really real and you have no control, but there's this constant like plant energy and constant like friends, like I said, outside that you can talk to and work with, like if they let you. It makes you feel a lot more grounded and like a lot more in control.
Water has been recently just sharing with me, just sit with me. There's nothing to do. You don't need to ask questions. This is my most recent thing, is just coming to water and laying down or sitting up, being still, not asking questions, and just being with. And the water shared with me a couple days ago, just you being with me and sitting with me, I will charge you up, energetically. You send your love to me, and I will give back to you. I'll give life back to you in that energetic pulse.
People come at all different levels, but there's definitely people who are like wanting more information or feel like they want to be spiritual in this way that isn't like religious. There's definitely people who like I've seen come in over the years that go from being just curious into like finding their niche or like having their own practice, or being like, oh, I discovered that I really care about working with ancestors or crystals or whatever it is.
My intention, my goal is to always provide support and healing for spiritual seekers looking to develop or deepen or come back into their faith and relationship with God or their own intuition. It's going to look different for massage as opposed to Reiki, as opposed to hypnotherapy. In massage, I find that people's bodies, their water talks to me and tells me, okay, now imagine your muscle is a balloon, and as I press down on this specific space, you're letting air out of the balloon, really kind of like bringing in somatic awareness into their muscles to get people to communicate with their body, because our body is a conscious living thing, being, I should say. And when we give it the signals and permission to, oh, okay, this is safe to relax. Oh, this is safe to let go. Oh, okay, thank you so much for letting go. The body will follow suit. In hypnotherapy, I'm really finding that I want to be working with people to help them mend or heal the relationship with their inner child and their inner loving parent, which inevitably will bring us closer to God. If we're loving ourselves and healing ourselves and devoting time to loving ourselves, that's gosh, what does God want for us most? To be tender and loving to ourselves, and thus being able to be tender and loving towards others.
When it comes to like colonization, it's the erasure of language, and plant medicine is a language that has been erased for a very, very long time. It's intimidating because you think that you have to learn this whole new language, but honestly, like, the language of our body sings with the plants, and teaching people what that is really fun and really nourishing. Having confidence and like communicating what's going on with your body is so empowering. I'm not here to like be an authority in your life. I'm just here to help weave a new story, basically, and, you know, just trying to actively break down the hierarchy in medicine and help folks find a balance, and also like find a balance between like this relationship that's not based off of dominance and submission, I guess.